Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Go Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go Toronto, go. Go Argos, go, go, go.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of the Argo Bounce Live audio show, a weekly show devoted to the CFL's Toronto Argonauts with co-host Nick Small and myself. I hope everyone's doing well on this Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. The Toronto Argonauts are coming off a bye week already in week 2, so they've had a week off to prepare, an extra week off to prepare for their upcoming game this Saturday night at 7 o'clock against the Edmonton Argos, or Elks, I call them. And I'm looking forward to my show tonight with my co-host Nick Small. We're just going to talk about Argos, Elks this Saturday night, and a little bit about CFL Week 2 action as well. And Nick was at the Hamilton, Saskatchewan game on Sunday night. I'm going to ask Nick what happened with the Hamilton Tiger Cats in that second half of the game against former Argo defensive coordinator Corey Mace and former Argos running back AJ Ouellette as well. There's always an Argo connection around the CFL, and I'm excited to bring my guest Nick Small on for episode 2 of the Argo Bounce Live audio show, which is live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X, I call it Twitter, and Instagram as well. Good evening, Nick. How you doing?
Hey, Chris, and how everybody is tuned in. Glad to be here again for another day covering the Toronto Argos. Yeah, despite it being a bye week for the Argos, and fortunately not week 1 this time, it's still been a very busy week for this team. We saw that they had the announcement, the screening of the Running Back Relentless film dedicated to Andrew Harris. We saw that the Toronto Argonauts announced the addition of Ricky Ray to the all-time Argos list. We talked a little bit about it last week, and we'll jump into it today as well. A little bit about Ricky Ray being added to that. And then, yes, like you said before, I, for once, went to a non-Grey Cup game that featured 2 teams which were not the Toronto Argonauts. I made my way down to Hamilton, and I got to see the Hamilton-Saskatchewan game. And maybe we can start there before we get into talking about anything else. I might be a Toronto Argonauts fan first, but I am a fan of the CFL as a whole. And when you have such a perfect day scheduled, it's at most 25 degrees, it's sunny, there's not a cloud in the sky, it's not too hot, it's not too cold, there's no chance of rain, no strong winds. It just makes for an absolutely perfect Sunday night for football, no matter where you are. And seeing how things are sometimes, we do have a bit of a rivalry with Hamilton, but to be able to almost walk to your opposition's back door and to watch a game in their hometown, it is pretty awesome, and something that I think we take for granted maybe sometimes because of the rivalry. There's a lot of cool Cat fans that come down, maybe just to boo the Argonauts, whether or not they're that supportive of the team we're playing against, but it is a pretty cool thing and something really special. The only other 2 teams that might be able to do it, You could argue Montreal and Ottawa. You maybe argue Edmonton and Calgary, but really, there's no proximity closer than Toronto and Hamilton. So it was a lot of fun, and it is interesting to learn some things on how one team um, projects their advertising, their marketing, their game day, and compare it to how your team does it. There's some things you can learn. There's some things that you can argue that we do better than Hamilton does, or the other way around, that Hamilton does better than us. So it's a great learning opportunity and to experience it. And at the end of the day, we all love Canadian football.
I saw the first half of the game, and in the second half, I had another show, so I missed it. Nick, the attendance there, it looked like there was a good crowd there, but there was a lot of empty seats. And for a market that kind of badmouths the Argos for not having bigger crowds, Hamilton, there was a lot of empty seats in that stadium on Sunday night, to be honest, from what I saw on TSN.
Yes, I mean, there was a decent amount in the upper level. I think if you were to shuffle the deck and fiddle with everything, you could make maybe an argument that the one side of the upper deck could have been completely empty, and then like in Toronto, and the other side, the rest of it probably would have been packed pretty much full to bursting. But I find it is a little bit of an unfair comparison when you're comparing a market like Hamilton compared to Toronto. One of the core things in Hamilton Ticats identity is that they're not Toronto. So to kind of use that identity as something to unite people in the city of Hamilton is something that you don't really see in the same way at Toronto. You don't have the direct competition of the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Blue Jays or the Raptors or a million big celebrity concerts going on throughout the year, whereas there's a bit less going on 45 minutes an hour down the road in Hamilton. But those who do come are dedicated. They're just as committed fans to Hamilton as they are the Toronto Argonauts, and it is great to see that they have such a great community spirit. And I spent the pregame at the tailgate down there. I ended up not wearing any Argos gear, which might be the one knock against me, but it was a fun experience, and people there are really passionate in the same way that any other team market is. And it's cool to see that dedication builds such a vibrant culture around their football team. And if things keep going the way they are in Toronto with the success on the field and with the way things like tailgating and other stuff is going on here, I think we are starting to see a bit of a demographic shift. We're starting to see younger audience members coming to the games, and hopefully this is part of what we've kind of talked about this season and last season about trying to attract more fans.
What kind of a crowd are you expecting for Saturday at BMO Field? And before we get into the Argos talk as well, what exactly happened in that second half with the Cats and Saskatchewan? Hamilton was up 20-7 at halftime, and the way their offense was going, I'm like, okay, they've got this game. The way Bo Levi Mitchell was playing, they were moving the ball, but second half was a completely different story at Tim Hortons Field.
Yeah, I mean, I still thought Hamilton played decently in the second half. It really came down to that last 3 minutes or so where just they stopped playing. I think frankly what it came down to, they had a two possession lead, and you get complacent. You think, oh, garbage time, they're gonna give up. But Saskatchewan didn't give up the week before in Edmonton, and they didn't give up in the game against Hamilton. And yeah, you can argue that it was off the one tipped ball that was intercepted that was kind of a giveaway that helps seal the game, but that could have been a fluky thing that could have happened in any game. And I think as a whole, I think it's going to do better for Hamilton in the sense that they're going to use this as a learning opportunity. And you see the way that they've responded to it. It's really easy to kind of let things fall apart and be down in the dumps, mope around. But the team that I don't necessarily worry about the reaction to Hamilton fans. I look at the way the players and Scott Milanovich, head coach, and the way the coaching staff is reacting to it. They're using it as a learning opportunity and as a way to unite over it, because they know what this feeling is like now as a team, and they know they don't want to feel it again. So I think that they're going to use that as motivation. Now, because the really wild thing about all this is they now have to go to Saskatchewan this week and play them. So I think they're going to use it as a big motivating factor for coming all hands down and frankly showing no mercy to Saskatchewan if they get in such a situation again. Don't take your foot off the gas. And I do feel bad for Bo there, because that's been one of the best games he's played in the last 4 years, and wasn't one that, of course, it's easy to point fingers. I wouldn't blame him especially. I thought Bo was fantastic. And unfortunately I think it's more a team loss than on any one individual, just getting complacent at the end.
One thing, Saskatchewan is it's their home opener, and they're going to be fired up. The team is 2-0. Corey Mace has these guys buying into his system. Obviously, they still have some issues on their defensive side of the ball and penalty wise, but I think Saskatchewan is an improved football club, and I think it starts with their head coach. And as for the Tiger Cats, they're 0-2, but it's a long season, man. And going 16-2 doesn't guarantee you win a Grey Cup. So I wouldn't panic right now if you're in Hamilton or in Winnipeg. Obviously, Winnipeg's got such a high standard, but it's only 2 games out of 18, and right now there's lots of football to be played. And this week we got a whole bunch of Week 3 games. Ottawa, Montreal, which is an intriguing matchup. BC and Winnipeg, rematch of the West Final. Edmonton against Toronto, the battle of the Toronto Argonauts. And Sunday, we got rematch part 2, Hamilton, Saskatchewan. Nick, before we get on to the Argos here, just thoughts on some news this week or last week, that the release of Sean Oakman and signing of wide receiver Jake Herslow, I think. Herslow?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't know a whole lot about Jake Herslow. I thought I recognized his name. I think it might have been on either probably on the negotiation list, but I'm not 100%, to be honest. I don't know a whole lot about him, but I think picking up another American wide receiver, given the release of Oakman and Benoit Marion, it seems like the kind of thing we sort of expected, and we kind of talked about last week, where by losing 2 defensive linemen, you free up space now where you're probably weakest. You have a lot of receiver injuries. There were a lot of guys that were on the injured list last week or 2 weeks ago now, and another wide receiver to fill that spot. And with it being an American, kind of putting your top pick that you can get a hold of is a good option. And then I still think they'll probably make another move for another DB at some point, whether it's a safety, probably not, but maybe like a halfback or a field side corner. Maybe we'll see. But I can definitely see that potentially being in the mix. And when we looked at who got signed between Sean Oakman and Benoit Marion, you saw that Marion got signed first. So I know you've brought up before that it's a business, unfortunately, and sometimes you got to make tough business decisions, and it's probably one of those kind of things that they had to make, and this was what they were left with.
I do feel that if Oakman is healthy, which we don't know the whole story behind that, I do feel he'll be back in the CFL this year at some point. And I see McFadden, I believe, signed with the Ottawa Redblacks, I believe. Am I correct on that, Nick?
Yep. McFadden signed with Ottawa, so they have another boundary side corner and one of the best zone coverage corners, I think. So it's definitely something that'll help them out. Just thinking back at the Winnipeg game, it's probably the one I watched the least of the 4 games this past week. So, but it was a huge win for Ottawa, and they proved that they can take down a top dog in Winnipeg. So I think it's easy to compare and say that Winnipeg lost that game or they're having some weird struggles, but Ottawa deserved to win that game. And you saw that after the weather delay, a huge stop when Winnipeg had 3 goal line attempts and they weren't able to capitalize on it. So
there's only 9 teams in the CFL, but I really feel this year every game's going to come down to 1 or 2 plays, Nick, and sometimes that's what happens. The Edmonton Elks are only a couple plays away. If they clean up their miscues and don't turn over the ball and get sloppy with it, the Elks could be 2-0 as well. And let's talk about them right now. Thoughts on this week's opponent, the Edmonton Elks. on Saturday night at BMO Field, on Pride Night too at BMO Field. Sean Bowen couldn't tell me all the details because I tried to pry out what they were doing, but he said you have to come down to the stadium to see what they're doing for that.
Yeah, for any of our viewers who weren't aware earlier today, Chris Pomay interviewed Sean Bowen earlier on his talk show. So we got a little bit of insight towards team and looking at towards Pride Night up ahead. Really, I think the Pride Night is, of course, one huge big event of this day. But I think for those of us who look at the rosters and whatever, I think a big part of it is the reunion for a lot of former Argonauts players who left this offseason. We originally, a lot of people predicted that everybody was going to follow Corey Mason, go Saskatchewan. Well, it turned out the majority of players went to Edmonton, of all places. So just to look at a list of guys, I have McLeod Bethel Thompson, Curly Giddens Jr., Boris Beatty, Javon Leake, and most recently, as of just before last game, Josh Haggerty have all signed in Edmonton. So there's a lot of key guys who are part of the new roster in Edmonton. And as you mentioned before as well, it wasn't that long ago that Edmonton was losing games pretty handily. Now they just had one or two mistakes that unfortunately fell against them that probably cost them their two losses. They could have very easily been a 2-0 team right now. So I think that puts a lot of pressure now on the Argonauts this week, because with guys like McLeod and Curly Giddens coming back in, they're going to want to put off a performance. And as much as I'm really looking forward to welcoming them back to Toronto, I'm a little worried that they're going to pull off an A game and McLeod's going to have one of these 350-yard, 4-touchdown games, probably 3 to Curly Giddens. Beatty's going to make like a 67-yard field goal with the wind at his back. Like something crazy like that's going to happen in Edmonton's way. So we got to hope that our boys, our Cam Dukes and everybody can hold them off.
I just want to say a shout out to Rod Peterson, the host of the Rod Peterson Show, Monday to Friday from 12 to 2 on WQE 99.1 FM. Rod was the former longtime 20-year plus play-by-play announcer for Saskatchewan Roughriders, and Rod's one of the biggest CFL supporters out there as well. So I'm hoping maybe one day we'll be able to get Rod to come on the Argo Bounce Live audio show. But I want to say thank you to Rod for your support and checking out the Argo Bounce Live audio show, which is live streamed on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, X, and also on Instagram, and hopefully more platforms in the future. And we're also on all audio platforms: Apple, YouTube Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, any audio platforms we are on there. Just to let you know, Nick, too, Google Podcasts are going to be gone as of June 23rd. So anyone that subscribes to us on Google Podcasts, you can listen to us on YouTube Music. Just type in Chris Pomay, YouTube Music as well. Nick, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Obviously, there's a lot of former Argos going to be here Saturday night for the Elks. In your opinion, who's going to get the biggest ovation from the crowd at BMO Field?
That's an easy one. You ain't putting me on the spot. The guy who deserves it the most for all the crap he put up with that last season when he won the Grey Cup in 2022, McLeod Bethel Thompson. We all owe him a humongous standing ovation for everything he did that year, for all the BS he had to put up with, for the amount of people who kept telling him every time he won a game that Chad Kelly was still better than him. McLeod Bethel Thompson deserves the earth from Argos fans that night.
I'm gonna go with all of them are gonna get ovations, but I'm gonna go with Curly Giddens Jr. But you know what? I think they all deserve it. They all contributed to the 2022 Grey Cup championship team, and unfortunately, the CFL is like the NFL and any other business. It's about where you can get a bigger contract, and it's a money-driven league too. So unfortunately, you can't keep everyone. But I agree, Nick. I think Thompson is probably going to get the loudest cheer, but I think they all deserve to get an ovation, and it's going to be a very good game. I know everyone's like, "Hey, the Argos are going to steamwalk over the Elks," but I think the Elks are improved. I'm not sure they're quite a playoff team yet, and they still have to find a way of winning of a game. So if the Elks can eliminate their turnovers and their miscues, I think they have a chance to be very competitive in this game. But if they self-destruct again in the fourth quarter, then the Argos will win this game. I did talk to Sean about some keys, and he thinks the key for the Argos to win this game is their front four. If they can put pressure on McLeod Bethel Thompson, who doesn't have a lot of mobility, and at his age, I think that's going to be huge how much pressure they can get on him. And for the Elks, they're going to have to get that ball out of his hands quickly to protect him from that Toronto pass rush. The pass rush of the Argonauts that had 6 sacks against the Vernon Adams Jr. Lions last week.
Yeah, I thought McLeod looked quite well in that game, at least through the first 3 quarters. I thought McLeod looked good. I think the Argonauts, kind of like their week 1 matchup, I think they've got to really prove or continue to prove that they can continue to be a productive offense. Of course, the big story was last season was them being kind of carried by Chad Kelly, but we saw that Cam Dukes last week against BC was able to do the job, especially after coming off a big low point in that game when there was the fumble that got returned, and I think it was 20-3 or whatever that BC was up. That BC looked like was going to run away with it for a while, but the offense was able to rally back together and to prove it. There are definitely some guys on the secondary of Edmonton that I'm a little worried about. Not the least of which being Luches Purifoy. But I think that the offense has got to continue proving that they can be productive more than anything, because I have complete faith in this defense being able to shut down and to put pressure on McLeod and Curly Gittins and everybody else on the Edmonton lineup. So it's going to come down to, at the end of the day, you need points to win. So you're going to need your offense to be productive.
And they got to have McLeod Bethel Thompson play a perfect game. No interceptions or anything like that either. So we'll see what happens. But I do like the Argos' chances. But Nick, for those that are watching for the first time this year, who are some Argos on this team to look out forward in this game against Edmonton and going forward in this season?
Well, the guy that I think is pretty obvious on the defensive side as the number 1 guy to keep an eye on is Wyndon McManus. That guy is everywhere. And even in that BC game on special teams, he was making tackles. When I don't think last year he played quite as much on special teams, but the guy's unbelievable. He's just a one-man machine all over the field, just absolutely tearing people apart left, right, and center, making tackles he has no business making. I think he's the leader of this defensive core and why they were so successful in the game against BC. So he would probably be my number 1 guy to watch. The other thing I would argue looking at is the pass protection that the O-line is providing for Cam Dukes. And that's a little bit unfair because you're talking about 5 guys rather than just 1, but this was the most valuable offensive line last year and was a huge part to the success of this team. You need a good line to be able to march down the field and score points. And you can argue, seeing the contrast of it, look at how AJ Olette's performance in Saskatchewan has been through 2 games compared to before. He doesn't have the same kind of offensive line as he did in Toronto, and that's partly to why he hasn't amassed a 100-yard or any other kind of big running yardage game. The offensive line is probably the most important part of an offense to be successful. And this Argonauts team proved in that BC game that they're still one of the best. So I encourage people to take a little bit more time to look at O-line play rather than just the receiver DB matchups on offense defense this week.
Absolutely. Hey, and Nick, and to be a successful football team, it really starts with the O-line and the D-line. And for Edmonton, if they can protect McLeod Bethel Thompson and he has time, I think they can move the ball on the Argos, because I think the Argos secondary still needs a little bit of work going forward. So I think for the Elks, getting that ball out of McLeod Bethel Thompson's hands is going to be key, because I do think they can make some plays on the Argos secondary. But if they don't, it could be a very long night for Bethel Thompson against that Toronto front four. But I'm looking for a 31-28 Argos win. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game, but I think 31-28. And I really believe Cam Dukes is going to have another good game on Saturday night as well. Hey, Nick, I want to get to this to you. We're going to talk about this now, but let's bring it up. Thoughts on quarterback Ricky Ray becoming the 27th all-time Argo member and being introduced on Friday, June 28th against Montreal. Unfortunately, I will be in Buffalo that weekend, so you're going to have to fill me in on the Ricky Ray thing.
Yeah, well, we talked a little bit about it last week that they had announced they were going to add someone to the all-time Argos list. I narrowed it down to someone from the generation of Ricky Ray, Chad Owens, and Andre Dury, and we ended up getting the quarterback, Ricky Ray, which I think is absolutely well-deserved. You can make a case that his numbers, Ray's numbers alone with either Toronto or Edmonton, not factoring in the other, is enough to make him a Hall of Fame worthy candidate. So when you look at the numbers he put up, breaking records, being all-time Argos leader in like everything, career passing yards, single season passing yards, single season touchdowns, 300 plus yard games, 400 plus yard games, like any stat you look at that a Toronto Argonauts quarterback has set with over 150 years of history, may I remind you, that Ricky Ray is the top of all of them. It says how much he put into this organization, into this team. And you hear the stories about how he's such a mild-mannered, humble leader, but is the guy that motivated everybody to win that Grey Cup in 2017. And of course, the one in 2012 when he was traded for the 100th Grey Cup anniversary. So to my mind, it's absolutely well deserved, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him in Toronto for that game against Montreal, because I know if I get a chance to, I definitely want to say my thanks to him, because I might have brought it up once before in the podcast, but I did play catch with him one time in an Argo youth camp as a kid one time, so I have really fond memories of him, and he's an absolute legend. So totally well deserved. He will be in the Canadian Football Hall of Fame at some point. Mark my words.
Absolutely. Hey, Nick, he had a lot of great games in Toronto. Obviously, the 2012 team, but they were dominant and they were expected to win that Grey Cup. I'm going to tell you my most memorable Ricky Ray game is going to be that 2017 Grey Cup against Calgary. Nobody gave the 9-9 Argos a chance to upset the heavily favored Calgary Stampeders, and that game was in Ottawa. Bad weather, snow, and to me, I think that game was the most memorable out of all of them. And I was going to say, unfortunately, I was at Ricky Ray's last game at the home opener in 2018 against Calgary, and where he got that hit, and that ended his career. But all-time Argo great quarterbacks: Doug Flutie, Conrad Trellaway, Ricky Ray. Ricky Ray has got to be in the top 5. I'm not sure where you want to rank him there, but to me, he's a top 5 Argonaut all-time great quarterback, and this is well deserved. Nick, what are some of your favorite Ricky Ray moments with the Argonauts?
Yeah, I think like you said, the 2012 Grey Cup season was something wild. The moment we heard that trade happened, that Ricky Ray was coming to Toronto, my dad and I looked at each other, and the first thing we said was, "We're winning the Grey Cup this year." It was just such a mind-boggling thing at the time that Edmonton would trade Ricky Ray to Toronto, and the fact that it wasn't just some one and done thing, that it led to almost a decade of a career here in Toronto was just wild. And then, yeah, like you said, the Grey Cup, of course, in 2017 was another one. I look at the week before that. They played Saskatchewan in Toronto, and it was just getting to that winter weather. It was just starting to fall, and it was a cold game. I was at the game, the Yates Cup, which is the youth the U Sports OUA final between Laurier and Western. I was at that game the night before in Western, frozen. I went to the Saskatchewan Toronto game after, and I remember it being slightly less cold, but still pretty frozen. And to see the way that Saskatchewan took the lead late, and then Ricky Ray was able to so calmly and collectively lead a drive back to under almost no time. I don't think he had even 2 minutes left to come back in that game and win. That just showed how fantastic a leader he was and how he was able, by sheer will, to move the ball down the field and score in a clutch moment. And yeah, for me, Ricky Reyes is one that I'm always going to remember as one of the best Toronto Argonauts quarterbacks ever.
Do you feel in the future he could have his number retired by the team?
Oh,
putting you on the spot here.
One.
Put you on the spot here.
I think, as I kind of said before, I think what separates the other four, Joe Kroll, Denny Nicola, Dick Shadow, Bimal Clemens, the problem is that the amount of
great players on this team.
Yeah, great players. I don't deny that. Yeah, you have to be. I mean, everybody on the all-time Argos list is a great player too. But the amount they contributed to the organization following their retirement is what defines those apart from the rest. So, and I don't mean this as a knock against Ricky Ray, because as a player, he's outstanding. He's going to be one of the best ever. But because of that thing alone, he's probably not going to be a retired number. In the same way that Doug Flutie, at that time when he was with the Argonauts, the greatest Argonaut quarterback they ever had, without a doubt. And you could argue he's better than Ricky Ray for what he did in those 3 years. But what has he contributed to the organization past his retirement? That's I think the thing that sets those four apart.
Well, to me, the numbers should be retired based on your football career. But Nick, I wanted to say, if they did do what I thought they could do, then they would have 27 numbers. Like the New York Yankees are running out of numbers. So maybe one day the Argos can honor some of these numbers, like number 10 and stuff like that. But you do make good points too, Nick.
That's why you have the all-time Argos list, because as we saw, the retired numbers list will be 22 names long otherwise.
Well, yeah, because look at the Yankees; they've got over 30 numbers retired, and the Boston Celtics too. So, but no, Ricky Ray is well deserved, and I do believe in the future Chad Owens will get in. It's just a matter of time, but before he gets in. But Ricky Ray was a no-brainer.
Another thing that makes it challenging, keep in mind, baseball's got a roster of, you include the bullpen guys, backups, it's like what, 20 names, at 20 numbers at most. CFL roster right now I think is 45.
45, yeah, and then 10 on the practice roster.
Yeah, and then you compare it to like the NFL, and they got 90 something or whatever, and then you look at college football, and you can have anybody who goes to the college can play. It seems sometimes with how many guys they got on the bench. So there's only so many numbers you can dish out. So if you start retiring too many, you can even look at the Montreal Canadiens or the Toronto Maple Leafs, that you can't wear a number below 20 anymore, it seems. So yeah, it gets hard when you retire too many names.
So what are you looking forward most to the game Saturday night against the Elks at BMO Field?
I think probably the ovations. I think just recognizing some of those guys who are no longer part of the Argonauts organization but gave so much. That's the part that's really going to hit me, because with everything that's kind of gone on the last couple of years, it hadn't really quite felt to me that we got the proper opportunity to thank them, and particularly McLeod, because that same year he won the championship, he went out, thought of his family, retired from the CFL, played in the USFL, and is now back. It's going to be the first real opportunity we have as fans have gotten to thank McLeod in particular in person.
I would like to ask him why he went with 10, because in Toronto, didn't he wear 4?
Yeah, he wore 4. Yeah, to be honest, I'm not 100% as to reasoning why. That'd be a good question to ask him, though.
All right, Nick, and before we wrap this up in a few minutes, I wanted to get your overall assessment of the CFL after the first 2 weeks, and what's your thoughts on Winnipeg and Hamilton, and can they both turn their seasons around at some point?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's only 2 games through. Yeah, for Winnipeg, I think a lot of it came to the way they approached this season, and it's probably not the way a lot of us expected them to, or that we've kind of seen teams do in the past. They rested a lot of starting guys, and they're dealing with some pretty key injuries. That being said, Hamilton's dealt with some injuries themselves as well. I think they have more guys on the 6-game injured list already than anybody else. And to be fair, the Argonauts had the most in 2022 when they won the Grey Cup as well. So that is an example is a defining factor that, you just because you start slow doesn't mean you can't pull it together and win a championship. I do believe they'll turn the season around. And in fact, I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but I think Hamilton's going to beat Saskatchewan this week.
Speaking of that, let's do our predictions for week 3. I'm gonna go first. Ottawa, Montreal. I think that's an interesting matchup, but I got to go with the Alouettes at home, 23-17 over Ottawa. BC at Winnipeg. BC's 1-1 coming off a win. Winnipeg's 0-2 at home. I got to go with the Bombers. I can't see them going 0-3. I'm going to go with the Bombers winning this game 27-24 and another close game. The Argos Elks game, I really think there's gonna be a lot of offense, and I'm gonna go with the Argos winning 31-28. And Hamilton, Saskatchewan, Nick, this is the tough one for me. Hamilton really doesn't want to go to 0-3. Saskatchewan's off to a good start, 2-0, and this is their home opener. I'm gonna go. My heart says Saskatchewan, but my brain says Hamilton. I'm gonna listen to my brain. I think the Cats are gonna pull it off. I think Tim White is gonna be an X factor for the Cats because he's had 2 horrendous games where he's dropped touchdown passes that have affected the outcomes of the game. So I'm gonna go with the Cats getting their first win of the year, and Tim White and Mitchell having a big game, and James Butler too. So I think the Cats are gonna win that game. Let's go with 26-20 over Saskatchewan.
Yep. So looking at my 4 picks, like yourself, I have Montreal over Ottawa at home. I think Montreal, I'd probably put them on the top of my power list right now with the way they've been playing so far through 2 games. So I put Montreal at the very top and above Ottawa at home. I'm going to pick BC over Winnipeg. I think until we see a little bit more out of Winnipeg, some of the mistakes start to fade. I'm going to keep them behind in games, even at home, and I think BC's got a lot of momentum going for them. Even in the loss to Toronto, they still look like a pretty good team out there. So I'll pick BC over Winnipeg on the road. I'm going to take Toronto over Edmonton, but I think it's going to be a little bit more in the Argonauts' favor. I think the D-line pressure is going to really be able to get to McLeod. So I'm going to predict something along the lines of 35-23. So kind of almost a 2 full possession victory for the Argos. And then Hamilton, Saskatchewan, like we talked about a bit earlier, I'm picking Hamilton over Saskatchewan. I think the way that they've approached the loss to Saskatchewan is going to motivate them to go over the hump and to pull off a huge upset win in Rider Nation.
I think we should keep a track of our picks for the year, Nick, and who has the best record at the end gets the free beer from the other guy.
Mine is easy. I have not made a wrong pick so far, so I've got it easy.
All right. Well, we'll starting tonight. So
okay.
We'll keep a track. Hey, Nick, before we wrap this up, I'm going to play a post-game interview with Ryan Dinwiddie from the Argos after their win against BC. And then just give me some final thoughts about the Argos Elks game on Saturday night.
Shout out, Coach.
And everybody watching us, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that like notification as well. And here's Ryan Dinwiddie after the Argos win against the BC Lions last week at BMO Field on the home opener on June 9th.
He bounced back after that fumble. We got to get rid of the ball there. We're going to make mistakes, all of us. But I thought he bounced back and made the plays we needed to make to win the game.
What kind of adjustments did you make at halftime, outscoring BC 30-7 in the second half?
Yeah, really not much as far as adjustments, just kind of reloading and kind of saying guys were right here. We had to fight our way back in the second quarter, build some momentum. We said, look, we're going to get the ball in the third quarter. We're going to score. We're going to change the game. So I thought, offensively we could have done more. But, it was a good game. especially week one, right? You're always going to offense going to have some tough times.
Yeah, do you think leadership's important on this team, right? Guys like Franklin came in and showed you what they could do.
Oh, no doubt. I told the guys, I just got done talking to them. The leadership in that room is infectious. I just feel like there's really not a bad guy in our locker room, and everybody's selfless, and that's what it takes to win. Like we always say, we expect to win, especially at home, but we expect to win because we put in a lot of work throughout the week. So a lot of hard workers, guys that get it, no egos, and I enjoy coaching.
Ryan, were you able to get pressure with your four? Did you do something with the front seven?
Yeah, I think that's what we wanted to have some fresh legs. So that's why we went an extra defensive lineman this week and for DI. I thought they did a great job. Got after the quarterback. It was a difference maker. It was our front seven, right? And Wint made some plays. JJ went down. Selpick came in. He played well. That's why we brought Selpick on. When I had him in Calgary, I'm like, this kid can play some football. So it's great to see all those guys play well.
What sort of challenges does Vernon give you as a defense?
Just extended plays. Like you see some of the bigger plays, they were off schedule. He gets outside the pocket the 1 second forever. Unfortunately, we kept him on the back end. We always say we keep them on their back end when they're inside the 10. It's going to lead to at least 3. We had 2 drives where we should have kept them in their back end. He's a professional. That's why he's highly paid, and the reason why they think that they're the number 1 team in the league. Vernon can extend plays, and he's a good quarterback.
How big was that punt, John? You put them down at 10.
It was huge. Made them go. Have to go 100 yards to beat us. Big play there, and I think our defense made the plays they needed to in the second half. That was very impressive defensive performance second half.
Ryan, when you look at Jake, Jared, and Flo, how dominant can those 3 be?
You see it. Jake plays inside on first down. We put him down, on the edge on second down. And I said a few weeks ago, I feel like our D-line's better than last year. And, Jake's a great addition, blue-collar type of worker, flows the same way. It's going to make that other guys in the D-line room elevate their game too. So very proud of our veteran leadership.
Back to Cam as well. After that fumble, how instrumental is Coach Mike Miller being able to kind of calm him down and talk to that quarterback group and allowing him to progress with his game throughout the rest of the night?
Yeah, that's where Mike's at his best, right? He's got a good relationship with those quarterbacks and understands the big picture of things. And, we got to make sure he's in the right frame of mind, and Mike does that too. And I just try to tell him that you can't revisit that mistake, right? Happens. So let's move on to the next play and find a way to win this game. And, we put ourselves in a bad spot in the second quarter, but you sure seen the character of that locker room. We never wavered off the fact we're going to find a way to win this game.
A couple calls, maybe a little bit iffy on the officiating side. I don't want to get you into trouble, but in the fourth quarter, there, 8 minutes ago, it looked like it was a fumble. Did they give you any explanation as to why that wasn't? Yeah, they said that he lost his forward progress, right? So that's sometimes not always be the best, but I wish we had a few calls go our way. But I thought they did a good job for the most part.
Did you get an explanation on the challenge? It looked like his foot was out. Was his left foot in?
Yeah, so they pretty much said Toronto, said it was a catch. So, I can't really argue with the referees when it's out of their hands there. But, he was clearly bobbling, and I thought going out of bounds, I thought it was a challenge that I could win. I never win, but that's why I kept it in my pocket because there's a few other times I could have challenged, but I just didn't feel like it was the right time. But I felt if we challenge that one, we keep them, back on their end, and it's going to lead to points. So it was worth throwing.
How important was the play of Kadeem Carey tonight for you guys?
Well, that's why we brought him in. A lot of people bet against Kadeem, and I've known him for a long time. You've seen it tonight. So our running game is going to be exactly what it was last year. He's a good player.
And then how important was it to beat a team like BC week 1, just, get like a big challenge, like how you said they're a league favorite, but then for them to come into your house, for you guys to take care of business, how important is that, especially going now into the rest of the season?
No doubt. It was important for us to go against a great team. A lot of people are picking to, be in the Grey Cup. And, we beat them at home, big deal. Like, we got to go to Vancouver and win the damn game, right? So we should beat them at home. But it was good for us, just our locker room, 2024 Argonauts. And then let's see where we're at. So it's going to be a process. We're going to take it each day at a time. But I feel like we got a chance to win a lot of football games this year. But it starts with the next one.
2 more questions.
Overall,
Go ahead.
overall thoughts in the secondary tonight?
Yeah, they played well. We gave up some stuff I wish we'll clean up. The nice part is week 1, we will clean it up, right? We got a lot to learn from. We didn't play a clean game all 3 phases, but, that's expected the first game of the season. So it's great for us to learn from and understand that we got to be better to continue to win football games.
Going into the offseason, the special teams lost some players. You had minus and now plus. Speak to the pluses that you had in special.
Yeah, I think, we loaded up a little bit on the linebacker core. Let those guys, bring in Sophic. We got Brian. We got him later in the year from Montreal when they let him go. So feel really good about that room. I always watch it during practice. I watch special teams stuff. You can see the guys that understand their special teams player and how important it is, and they take their role very seriously. And it's just good. I think all those guys, man, I'm just so happy for them. Proud of them.
Last question, I the last.
Coach, the game could have got away from you earlier. You're down 14 points. I know it's only week 1, but what did you learn from your team?
Resilient, right? And we always say it's going to be, I always say 57 plus 3, but a full 60 minutes. And I always tell them, look, we can't worry about the outcome right now, right? Certain times you get down by 14, they're worried about the outcome. This is worried about the process, right? What are we going to do to get down let's kick a field goal or score a touchdown? Whatever we got to do, right? We'll find ways to win the game. It's never going to be easy. It's professional sports. They get paid too, right? So, sometimes you stub your toe and you got to, put your big boy pants on and find a way to win or slug it out if you're going to lose, right? Give your best. So, happy with that unit.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Next thoughts on that interview with Ryan Dinwiddie. I think he's the perfect coach for this team because I think they take a lot of their character and personality from their head coach. Next thoughts on Ryan Dinwiddie.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong about that, Chris. Absolutely. The head coach defines the team that plays under them. And I thought what really speaks to is their resiliency, their ability to compete for each other, that there's that selflessness aspect that you see across the organization. And most importantly, the fact that they're only looking at one game at a time, the whole 1-0 thing. And it's really works out now because we kind of talked going into the season with everything going on. They needed to have a good start at home. They just took a huge win against BC now. So if they can win one of these next 2 games between Edmonton and Montreal, even if they lose one, as long as they can win one of these 2, and then if they can go out west and they can win one of those next 3 games on their Western road trip, and they're right in the mix of things. They might not be the first seed team in the playoffs coming in, but they're definitely right in that mix and can at the very least host the East semifinal. And that's what it comes down to. You just got to be good enough to be in, because we've seen teams that have started the year 6-6 or 3-8 or something weird like that, and then they've gone on a huge tear. They've squeaked into the playoffs with an even record at 8-8 or something, and then they go and they win the Grey Cup like the 2017 Argonauts. So that's all it comes down to.
Yeah, the season schedule starts out well for the Argos. Obviously, the first 4 weeks, they have the bye week and then 3 home games. And then July 4th at Saskatchewan, that's going to be tough. July 11th at Montreal, the defending Grey Cup champs who are 2-0. And then July 20th at Hamilton. So right now, this game against Edmonton, I think, like I said, it's important for the Argos to try to take care of business at home because they do have a road-heavy schedule in July, and like you said, Nick, there are no gimme games in the Canadian Football League, and I even said that to Ryan Dinwiddie. I said, doesn't matter what a team's record is, everybody is trying to win the game and play for their jobs. And this season, it's going to be. I think the season's even going to be more competitive than last year across the league.
Yeah, well, it's looked that way so far, especially with the shocking way Winnipeg has started their season. So it's thrown a huge wrench into things, and it was kind of fun to make fun of everybody who predicted Winnipeg winning of the pro analyst panel that have now all picked BC to beat Winnipeg this week. So it's definitely made things really interesting. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad that the league has been this competitive. One of the statistics I found that's really interesting so far, I forget who it was that posted it, but and my apologies to that individual, you know who you are, but they posted the stat sheet of quarterback passing yards. And if you remember, it was like 2 years ago where everybody said, this year's generation of quarterbacks is the worst generation ever. Their passing yards suck, yada, yada. And through one game for some of us, 2 for others, there's at least an average league-wide between 250 and 300 passing yards a game. Like the offense generation so far this season through 2 weeks has just been phenomenal. And as we've seen, as much as strategic defensive games are entertaining for football nuts like myself, the majority of fans want to see high action packed, high scoring games with lots of touchdowns, deep passes, catches, flips in the end zone, all that kind of crazy, spectacular stuff. And so far, that's exactly what we've gotten. And we've gotten lots of games that have stayed close right to the wire. There aren't any games that have gone like one team's been up 20-0 in the last 15 minutes of the game in the fourth quarter. So it's made for some really good TV football as well. And we see that in the way that it's been marketed now, that there's more US games, that CTV is going to host the East Semi, the East Final, and the Grey Cup, as well as it being aired on TSN, I presume, as well as more US coverage through CFL Plus, but also on, I think, CBS. So you're seeing that the league is attracting more fans, which is a great thing to see.
I'm glad the CFL is going to be back on CTV, which hasn't been done since the late 80s, I believe. But I'm going to assume that they're going to simulcast TSN's broadcast on CTV, because back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, CTV had their own CFL crew. So I'm just going to assume they're just going to use the TSN feed for CTV. But it's still good because border cities in the States now will be able to watch it, because some of my friends in the States started watching the CFL in the 80s because it was on CBC, and they could get CBC in border city states. And now that it's only on TSN, so I'm going to give thumbs up to the CFL for getting some of their games back on CTV, and hopefully in the future, maybe CBC again at some point.
As long as we don't have more regional blackouts, because that killed an entire generation of fans.
Oh yes. I ended up listening to the Argo games back in the 70s and 80s on CFRB 1010 with Pete Martin and Bob Bertina, because the games were blacked out.
Yeah. So fortunately, we won't be seeing that again. I think they've learned from their mistakes. Before we go tonight, one thing I do want to go on a little bit of a tangent and advertise. If you haven't noticed on Twitter or X, on social media, there is a friend of mine, Connor Sauve. He announced this week for the CFL Fights Cancer drive, he is going to, on Labor Day weekend, walk from BMO Field in Toronto the whole 65 kilometers to Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton. I want to say that is an absolutely amazing feat that he's going to attempt. I want to give him a lot of kudos and support. I'm encouraging him to go all the way. And I want to encourage you as fans of the CFL to support him on this initiative as well. If you're looking to see his post, it should be pinned to the top of his Twitter profile at SAUVECONNOR, all one word. If you follow him, give him a follow. And you can also, on his pinned comment, he's got a link to the Childhood Cancer Research Center that CFL Fights Cancer is donating to. So go and donate some money for that. The goal this season is they want to raise $40,000. Right now, they're at about $32,000, which, considering we're 2 weeks into the season, we're already 1/5 of the way there. So that is an amazing initiative. Let's go and support Connor, and let's support everybody in the CFL Fights Cancer group. Let's try to raise some more money, and let's hopefully end cancer once and for all.
All right, Nick, and before I wrap this up, where can our audience follow you on Twitter, X? I know with me, you can follow me on all social media platforms, including at Chris D. Pomay on Twitter /X. Nick, what's the best place for our audience to follow you and message you on social media?
Yep. As always, you see it on the bottom line if you're looking at any of our video recordings of this podcast, at Nick_small_38. That is the best way to reach me. And I'm always down to talk Argonauts, curling, history, any of that stuff. By all means, reach out. I'm more than happy to chew your ear off talking about this stuff.
And for those people who don't have any plans Saturday and have never been to a CFL game or to an Argos game, come out to check out BMO Field. The game is 7 o'clock kickoff. The doors and the gates open at 6, I believe, or 5:30. And you can get tickets at argonauts.ca. And if you can't get down to BMO Field, unfortunately, you can watch the game on TSN or TSN 1050 on the radio with Mike Hogan and Ben Grant, who do a great job, as well as the TSN crew. But I'm just telling you, it's a great experience, and I think the weather should probably be good again on Saturday night. Probably be hot and humid, and it should be an entertaining game Saturday.
Oh, I hope that heat dome goes away, because I don't know about you, but I'm not a fan of being out in this 35-degree heat.
No, the older, hey, when you reach my age, you're gonna hate humidity and heat even more. So hopefully it'll be in the 20s. I don't mind if it's in the 20s.
These old -10 snow games don't seem so bad right about now. I know I, for one, from my experience in playoff games in that kind of weather, I will gladly take the snow and -10 over whatever this 35-degree insanity is.
All right. Well, Nick, I want to say thank you for coming on season 3 episode today. Season 3 episode 2 on Tuesday, June 18th. And we'll see you back here next week for another edition of the Argo Bounce Live audio show with Nick Small and Chris Pomay. And hopefully we'll be able to talk about another Argos win against the Eskimos, or the Elks. Sorry, I'm old school. I keep thinking of the Eskimos, the Elks. And then we'll preview the game against the Montreal Alouettes on Friday, June 28th, which unfortunately I won't be there, but that should be a hell of a game too. So Nick, thank you so much for coming on tonight, and we'll see you Saturday at BMO Field as a fan.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks everybody who tuned in. As always, go Argos.
Go Argos, and Nick, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, buddy. All right, guys, that wraps up episode 2 of the Argo Bounce Live audio show, a weekly audio show talking about the Canadian Football League's Toronto Argonauts. And if you give me a little bit of time tonight, I will have the audio and the video downloaded to all my social media platforms as well. Again, the Argos take on the Elks this Saturday. I'm trying to think, what day is it again? Saturday. What's today? The 18th. I guess Saturday, June 22nd. Saturday, June 22nd, 7 o'clock kickoff at BMO Field. And again, you can get tickets at argonauts.ca or watch the game on TSN or TSN 1050 with Mike Hogan, Ben Grant. Have a great evening, everybody. And we'll see you back here next week for episode 3 of the Argo Bounce live audio show with Nick Small and Chris Pomay. Have a good night, everybody. Great week. And as always, as Nick said, go Argos.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together.